Welcome to the latest episode of Oh No No No, Raith Rovers podcast. So we're here the Sunday after. We've played Dundee United at home, which has ended in a 1-1 draw. Vaughan got the first goal, coming on in the first half, up, funnily enough, the north end of Starks Park. United responded in the second half by a really strong performance where substitute Lewis Monk came on and scored in the 65th minute. So today I'm joined by two debutants on the podcast. We've got firstly a K107 veteran who's joined us recently. The Dutch gave us Guido van de Kamp and we've given them back Mr. Scott Fleming. Scott, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, Robbie. Cheers. Hope you're all well.
Aye, doing away. And secondly, the second debutant today is a man who can talk about both trips to Fukushima and trips to Firhill. We've got Mr. Leslie Mabin. How are you, Leslie?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Glad to hear. And then finally, recurring guest now, someone who Big Kev was clearly on a mission to correct the opinions of yesterday. We've got Blair Hopcroft. How are you doing, Blair?
I'm full of humble pie, mate.
Excellent. We love to hear it. So yeah, yesterday's game, obviously, as I touched on, it ended in a 1-1 draw. Raith Rovers, we started off with obviously a very similar lineup to, I think it was the same lineup pretty much as last week. Dundee United, obviously, we'd spoken a bit about their strength and depth. I'm going to come to you, Blair, firstly. So obviously we've mentioned about Dubrovsky having a very strong performance already, but I think it was a game where there was really sort of performances across the board. I'm just going to ask you, who did you think stood out for you as a man of the match contender?
For me, it was Dylan Easton, 100%. He was absolutely relentless yesterday. I mean, the boy Grimshaw, he's been waking up all night seeing Dylan Easton in his dreams, I think, because he just gave him an absolutely torrid afternoon. I was a wee bit worried when he got the booking. I'm not going to lie. I thought maybe that kind of takes a wee bit of the shithousery out of him, but no, I thought he was tremendous for 90 minutes yesterday. He was absolutely top class.
Yeah, I think with Easton, again, he's just, I said on, I think it was the first podcast that we did, that he's one of these players where if he's on his game, you know that he can sort of size up opponents and that he's able to run at them. So what about for yourself? So for Scott, was there anyone that in particular stood out for you yesterday across the board?
Yeah, there was a few standouts. I mean, it was a good team effort and all, but I think I said in our group chat yesterday, I thought it was Big Kev's probably best game for us, whether it was shot stopping. He came and actually caught a few crosses, which I think that's been something that he's been looking to work on, because there's been a lot of people have talked about how he's this 6'6", 6'7" keeper who really should be demanding his box a bit better, but he's not really coming and getting the ball, or he's kind of slapping at the ball instead of collecting it and taking pressure off his centre halves, really. But no, I thought he was solid all game. He made, I think, probably 3 top drawer saves that kind of kept it at 1-0 at the time, or at 1-1. So, and that one right at the end, diving to the bottom corner to keep it to get us the point as well. So I would probably go with Big Kev, but I wasn't against Sean Byrne getting it yesterday. I thought he was, again, first class. He just does the simple things really well, and yeah, he's been one of our better signings this season so far.
Yeah, I think that with Big Kev, obviously it was touched on upon during sort of our pre-match podcast that we felt that he could be a sort of standout player for us. Obviously, those sort of saves are the types of ones that he's renowned for, and I think that Blair's still got very much a valid point when we talk about his kicking and sort of distribution. Obviously, there was bits that yesterday. But yeah, just that type of character. And I noticed, I don't know if you picked up on it, obviously, because I know that you've watched it via Raith TV on the international stream, that Jim Goodwin was literally on the pitch at the end because he thought it had gone in. He ran onto the pitch celebrating, and then the ball gets carried up the pitch and he's got to run off the pitch because he's literally just like, oh, realised that that the ball's not in the back of the net because he's off celebrating. So Leslie, I'm going to turn to yourself. Was there anyone else in particular outside of those two that you thought that had a particularly good game?
We wondered for Josh Mullen.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, you see in the message boards and things, folks saying, what's he doing? And I think yesterday we saw a really good illustration of what Josh Mullen brings to us. That ball in from the right for Vaughan's goal was absolutely magnificent. It was just a perfect ball, right into where you want it to be. I mean, right enough, if I was a Dundee United fan, I maybe wouldn't be too happy at how a wee 5'8" guy got a free header and then had all the time in the world to stroke the ball into the net. But it was a magnificent ball in. I mean, the other thing I'd say as well about Mullen, and indeed this is true for Bunn as well, and also Murray, we've got 3-4 guys in the team now who've won this league before.
Yeah.
And we had a wee spell yesterday where we were really under the caution the second half. But, we came back into it. And I think having these cool heads on the pitch, having these guys who've been in these tough games before, who've been under pressure, who know what you need to do to get something out, I think that's really benefiting us. And I think Mullen yesterday exemplified that. A really good ball in and just being part of that dynamic. We didn't panic. We got back into it, we regrouped, and we had a wee spell at the end as well. So I'd just put a wee word in for Josh Mullen as well.
Yeah, I think that's naturally understandable. Josh Mullen's one of these players where, again, his deliveries into the box are second to none at this level. I'd be very surprised if you can find a better crosser of a ball at this. And I literally had that as a point of discussion for this podcast to bring up Josh Mullen, because I've just put next to underrated threat. And I feel like a lot of people look at that squad that we've got. Obviously, your Dylan Eastons, Lewis Vaughans, even Callum Smith, who's maybe a bit more pacey, a bit more tricky on the ball. And Josh Mullen just kind of almost flies under the radar a bit, but he's done really, really well with that delivery in yesterday. And overall, just a very good performance. Because, I mean, just with him, I think you'd say he's almost more like an inside forward rather than an outright winger, which is, I don't know. I mean, Blair, do you think that would be fair to say? What was your thoughts on Mullen's performance yesterday?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think something we spoke about a lot in the last couple of years was that kind of the following a really good player and coming in to play that position. I think Josh probably gets a little bit of criticism because he's not Aidan Connolly. And Aidan Connolly was kind of loved by the fans for his work ethic and just the constant dig, the constant run, the constant tackles, the defensive side, everything else. And then he'd still chip in with those great goals. And that's no Josh Mullen's game. And I don't think that's a criticism of him at all. I think actually over the 90 minutes yesterday, I thought he had quite a quiet game, to be honest with you. He wasn't massively involved. He doesn't offer a huge amount defensively, I think. But that cross, like you said, do you know what I mean? You take 90 minutes of everything else that comes with having Josh Mullen in your side for that one moment of class. Like there is no one else in the division, I don't think, that can put that ball in with the precision that he does it, and he does it every week. He actually, there was one moment in the first half he broke, and Vaughan was outside him, and there's a wee bit of me thinking, Josh, bury it. Like he broke into the box on the right hand side, and it sat up perfectly for him. And I thought, just strike it. And instead, he plays it wide to Vaughan, who's a good, 5 or 6 meters wider than him, and Vaughan's shooting. I don't care what happens. You know what I mean? Vaughan's shooting. So I'm thinking Josh Mullen's got to think to himself, like, there's no one to cross it to, so we're having a pop here.
Yeah.
And I'm in a better position than what Vaughan is. I think there's a wee bit of lack of confidence at times with him. But yeah, like a wand of a right foot.
Yeah. So, Scott, obviously you're following Rovers from afar, as we say, in the Netherlands, watching on Raith TV. How have you felt about Mullen's season overall?
Yeah, I think Blair's kind of hit the nail on the head there with I was at the Annan game away in the League Cup group stages when I was back home for a bit in the summer, and obviously that was good to actually get to see the team closer, and actually you're seeing stuff off the ball that maybe you don't see on Raith TV or whatever. But I thought Mullen was heavily involved in that game, and whether it be taking set pieces, corners, or he just was so direct that game. But since we've been in the league games, he has maybe been a touch quieter, but at the same time, I agree that his delivery is probably up there as the best in the league. He's undeniably, he finds the guy that he's looking for, and same with his corners, he seems to get that whip that just defenders hate, and it's not just floated into the back post, which defenders can just head away pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair sort of summary of where he's at the moment, and I think that there's still more to come from Josh Mullen, but I don't think that's sort of discrediting what he's done so far. So overall, in terms of, obviously, we'll go into a bit more into the performance itself, because I'm conscious that we've not really touched on the game. We've just obviously looked at sort of who the man of the match has been, sort of on that case. So to go into the game, obviously, looking at it from the start, Keith Watson missed out. What were your thoughts sort of prior to sort of kick off in terms of Watson missing out? Was that a surprise for anyone? Or obviously, I know that Ian had sort of said before the game that he was expecting maybe that Watson might be available. So I'll just start with yourself, Leslie. What were your thoughts when you sort of saw the initial lineup?
I think we'd sort of been set up during the week for the possibility of Watson not being there. If you sort of read between the lines of what the managers were saying, the sense was that we might not see Watson. And you're kind of clearly thinking for a game against the league leaders, that's going to be a big miss. And Hamilton not being there as well. You're looking at the bench and you're thinking it's not as bad as last season where you're looking over and seeing John Fredrickson and Conor McBride and a goalie. But
Yeah.
we're seeing it's getting a wee bit light again. So you're kind of thinking there's a couple of big names missing. And particularly the bench as well, you're sort of thinking, well, we'd ideally have a few more bodies in. I mean, I don't want to kind of run on too far ahead or steal the thunder, but there was at no point during the game defensively where you looked at anything and you thought we were missing Watson. I would say, to Brown's credit, he did a great job in there. There wasn't anything where you thought,
Yeah.
a centre-back, a proper centre-back would have done better. I mean, he did a great job. But, kind of looking at the start, you were thinking, oh, God, this is going to be a tough afternoon. But we got through it.
Yeah. And for yourself, Scott, obviously, was there any sort of changes that you would have felt would have potentially done it, or were you just quite happy to see us stick with where we were?
No, I think Bruni's done that a few times, stepped in at centre half last season whenever we were down bodies, which was a lot of the time last season. But even this year, he's been able to step up, and as Leslie mentioned, it's been good to see that we're not actually even really noticing it that much now. So it just shows you that he seems to be more settled. And last year, I think he kind of got caught a few times where they'd been under a ball and a guy falling in behind him. But this year, he seems to be a lot more aware in the box when it comes to set pieces and crossed balls. So, no, I'd agree that that sort of position, we don't seem to be struggling as much. But I think, I know it'll be for more midweek, but I would like to see Connolly start getting a bit of minutes, because my worry is now he's going to fall behind quite a bit because he's not getting any minutes at all. And yesterday, what did he come on, the 89th minute or something? And we all know what he can bring to the team. So if we can get him, if he can play even full 90 next week in the Challenge Cup, that would be great for us to see.
Yeah, I don't think that would really be a surprise if we did see Connolly obviously get that extended game time next week, with it being the Challenge Cup. Again, I think Ian Murray's touched on it before, because the squad's sort of so tight in terms of our positions at the moment, and we go into games and then we're winning these games or drawing these games. It's always been quite a close affair. So I think next week's really a good opportunity. And yeah, Blair, obviously, just to sort of go to yourself, do you think, going back to the Scott Brown point, do you think that that's a sacrifice that we might have to make over the longer term, just turning Scott Brown more into this sort of deputy centre half? Because he's obviously got the attributes to do it. What would your thoughts be about that?
Yeah, I think it's always good to have that option, that you don't have to completely change your side. I spoke about it midweek. I was really worried about the midfield. I thought two holding midfielders was going to be the way to go. My worry was that Stanton dropping deep loses quite a bit, actually, offensively. I feel like he's the one that drives us forward. So it wasn't so much for me about Scott Brown having to drop in. It was about the kind of the ripple effect that has through the spine of the side.
Yeah.
I think yesterday was kind of a tale of the two injuries. So I think had Lewis Moult been fit, I think it would have been a bit more of a difficult afternoon for Scott Brown. Tony Watt, I have to say, surprised me. He was in pretty good nick, and I thought he looked up actually really sharp yesterday.
Yeah.
But I thought we dealt with him really well, and I thought Scott Brown dealt with that really well, because he clearly had singled Scott Brown out. Like he was peeling away from Ewan Murray at every opportunity and trying to put himself on Scott Brown. And I thought he dealt with it really well. I would say that for me, and it's maybe a wee bit controversial, but I don't think they score that goal if Keith Watson's playing.
Yeah.
Because if you watch it, and I must admit, it took me about 7 or 8 goes on the Raith TV highlights I'm like, is it Liam Dick? And you follow the man. That's no Liam Dick, right? Who is it? And you follow it. And it's Scott Brown. It's great forward play from Moult. He drops deep.
Yeah.
He kind of in the mash and then comes back in again. And Brown gets caught amongst a couple of defenders and kind of get through with them. Yeah. And I just feel like Keith Watson's just going to stand his ground and go, he's going to the edge of the box, but he's coming back to me. I'm not following him. What am I going out there for? The ball's coming in here and I'm going to stand my ground. And I think that's maybe where we lost it a little bit. But no, I thought Scott Brown had a great game yesterday. I thought he was absolutely fantastic at centre half. Like, you couldn't criticise him.
Yeah, I think that, as you say, I think you're bang on the money. And to be honest, I watched that Dundee United goal again this morning. And again, like you said, I had to watch it like 4 or 5 times. And I'm still unsure as to who was marking who, but that's probably me because I'm a daft fan. Yeah, so we'll move on. Naturally, the goal came, as I say, sort of 23rd minute. It was that Josh Mullen ball into a certain Lewis Vaughan. Now, Lewis obviously gets the header off, goes down off the post, and he can knock in the rebound. So Lewis Vaughan's obviously a bit of an interesting one because he has been in and out the team. So Leslie, to come back to yourself, do you think this is a real opportunity for him to sort of make a stamp on the team now and to be able to kick on? I know that Neil Russell sort of touched on it in his post-match interview.
Absolutely is. So being a bit of a stats nerd, I was having a wee look at the scorers and things like this. Vaughan is already in the whole division in terms of goals per minute or whatever it is. He's number 1 out of the people that have scored a lot of goals. You know, he's right up there, even compared to something like Moult. For the number of minutes he's had on the pitch, he's been banging them in. And, you know, I know we used to talk a bit last season in K107 about, you know, is he still the same player? Is he still as good as he was before the injuries? Even if he's not, he's still a huge asset to us. Whether it's starting games, whether it's coming off the bench, his ability to just put chances away, he's still probably the most dangerous player that we have right now in terms of being able to put things away. So I would say absolutely, he's an absolutely key member of what we have, and he will be going forwards. I mean, I think as well it's worth just acknowledging above all else how good it is to have a fit and healthy Lewis Vaughan getting an extended run in the squad, putting goals away, celebrating in front of both stands, you know, noising the away fans up as well. Just how good it is to have that back after everything he's been through. But even putting that aside, if he hadn't had all of that, if he was somebody we just brought in the middle of last season, you'd be absolutely delighted with his contributions.
Yeah. So just to come to yourself, Scott, obviously with Vaughan getting the goals, he's obviously scored a few in the last few weeks. He got the double against Queen's Park, and then he's scored today or yesterday even as well. Do you think that puts a bit of pressure on Jack Hamilton as well? Because obviously he's in that position now where we're looking at him and sort of saying, right, well, Vaughan's getting the goals coming in. What's it happening in terms of this? Do you think that puts a bit of pressure on him?
I think it puts pressure on all the forwards, to be honest. I know that they'll all be... I think you can see we've got a good dressing room this year and they're all mates and they're all... But at the same time, all you hear from Murray and all you hear from any players that get interviewed is it's all competition at the end of the day and they're all fighting to get in that starting 11. So I think Jack Hamilton, I probably would like to have another goal or two to his name this season. And I mean, you could tell when he scored that opening goal against Morton at home that it looked like he was just happy to get that first goal because he just... I know it didn't take too long for him to get his first league goal, but at the same time, you could see him, he missed a lot of chances at Annan away and he missed a few chances in other games. And he just looked like somebody that was starting to feel a little bit of pressure on him, but that goal seemed to release a bit. And then he scored again in the Challenge Cup game as well. So he's got a couple of goals. They're two completely different types of players, so I don't think they're direct competition for each other. I still would like to see a little bit more of them playing together, but at the same time, it means dropping somebody that's in that team just now. And at the start, I was more happy to see this burning brown in the middle, and then you go, well, we've kind of made a rod for our own back here. We're playing so well with these two, we can't really drop them now, because if we drop one of them and go and lose a game, then it just looks a bit silly that we dropped them. So it is a tough one, but at the same time, Murray will tell you it's much better than what it was last year. He's going, I've only got 2 guys to bring on.
Yeah, 100%. And Blair, just obviously for yourself, with obviously Vaughan coming into that position, how happy are you obviously just to see that, in terms of just having that sort of dynamic of him coming in and being able to offer that up top? Just what's it, as a fan, just obviously what's your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's as Leslie touched on. I mean, Vaughan, to be honest, Vaughan could come on and play 90 minutes and be terrible, and I'd be delighted to see it, because the boys had a horrendous time of things. So, I mean, as far as a Rovers fan, no one's ever going to grudge him playing. I don't feel he's had a great season so far, if I'm being honest. I feel like I think he's feeling a bit of pressure. It's funny when you talk about pressure. I think Murray's under pressure in terms of, as Scott kind of touched on, when players come in and play well, how do you drop them and how do you keep everybody happy? I think there's a bit of pressure there. I think it hasn't suited Vaughan as well. Vaughan's been one of those players who would play anyway. Under McGlynn, it didn't matter. Vaughan plays anyway. Vaughan plays. That was how it always was. And I feel like Vaughan's trying at times to do too much. He's sometimes a wee bit, I think, greedy, you could probably put as a label on him. But yesterday, for me, was his best game this season. I thought he was brilliant. He worked really, really hard. He was kind of holding the ball up, looking for niggly little fouls, trying to break the game up and kind of do that. I think Scott's right. I don't think him and Jack Hamilton are direct competition, but there's only so many jerseys you've got to go around. You've got Josh Mullen, who yesterday sets up the goal. Vaughan scores it. So there's 2 players you're thinking, can you drop them?
Yeah.
And it's week in, week out. It's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I'd fully agree with that. I think that, as you say, the competition for places at the moment is just ridiculous, especially when you sort of look back towards last season. So we'll move on forward now. Obviously, second half, Dundee United came a lot more into the game. So Scott, just to go back to you, obviously you're watching from afar. Do you think that was just sort of symptomatic to the how it was that we'd maybe not got the strength in depth at the back that sort of Dundee United came into
it? Well, Louis Moult obviously came on pretty quickly. I think it was maybe 10 minutes into the second half they brought him on. And you could see straight away with him and Watt up front that the two of them have got a lot of pedigree. So it's, especially at the top flight level. So it wasn't a surprise to see Moult score, but at the same time, I still thought, overall, I didn't think they tore us apart or anything like that. I just thought that you could tell it was two centre forwards that just knew what they were doing and knew how to get into spaces or to kind of ruffle a few feathers. And it was, as I say, I thought we actually dealt with them all right for the most part. It was just that corner. It was a great save by Big Kev for the free kick that led to the corner. And then I just think that we got completely done by that sort of flick on. Like everybody seemed all right, and then it was just that slight deflection off, I think it was Doherty that knocked it on. And then as Blair was saying, that Bruni's kind of got lost in the melee, and then Moult's just been able to kind of hammer it home. But no, other than that, I thought we dealt with them okay. And actually, after we had a maybe 5-minute rocky spell after they scored, but after that, I thought that we kind of looked the more likely to go on and actually possibly win the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to sort of touch on that, yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And Doherty's obviously, when he gets that nick on, I think it just causes complete chaos in the box. Obviously, just with things like markers, the ball takes a completely different trajectory. Even if it's slight, it's still, there's a lot of bodies in there, so you can see why it's caused the issues. But overall, defensively, I mean, to their credit, I thought it was a huge performance from Rovers. I mean, Blair, just to obviously expand on that, the second half, in terms of it, do you feel? I think it wouldn't really be fair to say it's a park and the bus display. What were your sort of thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought I'd agree. Parking the bus definitely isn't a phrase I would have used for the game. I think that they were solid. It's a strange thing for me sitting in the south stand. I don't worry as much as what I would normally do. Like there's a weird calmness about this team, and I don't know. Be interesting to see whether Scott picks that up on the sort of TV feed. But last season, I'd have been sitting there like, oh my God, this is happening. Here it comes. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And yesterday, you're kind of going, nah, we're all right here. Like yeah, Kev's pulling off big saves, but other than the Middleton chance, they're all pretty much pot shots from distance. And I was kind of thinking about the whole Big Kev thing through the week after I kind of relentlessly ruined them on Thursday night. But I think it's actually just a generational thing almost with him. Like we're used to having kind of seasoned goalkeepers who do things in a certain way. You know, I had McGurn and Cuthbert and then McDonald. And he's very much of the big dive, push it wide kind of generation. So it looks really like he makes a save look like a good save. And it was that thing of coming away yesterday, you read the tweets and stuff of Dundee United fans, and they're going, oh my God, your keeper's amazing. Your keeper's incredible. And I'm thinking, he probably only made one or two, what I would think are good saves. The rest of them are saves he should be making, but he makes them look like good saves.
Yeah.
But no, I thought we were solid yesterday.
No, and I think it's reasonable enough. Even towards the end of the game, you sort of naturally, I think you never lose the worry of seeing that operations,
No.
the sort of the away support, sort of just the sort of ripple that goes up the stand when the ball hits the back of the net, and you look automatically to the offside flag saying, "Please fucking bail us out here." But I don't think anyone ever loses that because there is nothing funnier than an offside goal, and you see fans going mental and losing the way of themselves. So yeah, Leslie, for you, what were your thoughts on the second half overall?
I think Blair's kind of hit the nail on the head there. There's a calmness, I think, that we wouldn't have seen last season. You know, whether that's due to, as I was saying before, just having a bit more experience, whether it's just due to having a wee bit more depth in the squad, I don't know. But this is last season, you're thinking, right, we're losing this. You know, you're thinking, or we're absolutely hanging on, you know, Keystone Cops defending kind of stuff. But there was the wee rocky spell, as Scott said, but then, you know, we kind of came back into it. And then after Gullen came on, we had a couple of chances, a couple of shots, you know, forced a few saves out their keeper. There was also the wild deflection near the end where I think their keeper had no idea what was going on and tried to make a spectacular save because he felt he had to while the ball was sailing
That was a
away
comedy dive.
wide.
It was funny with that one because sort of you see it from the south stand and the deflection goes off and you think, oh, that's going out for a corner. And then as it gradually gets closer, you think, yeah, fucker, that might go in. And you can see why the keepers sort of made the such theatrics to go for that one. But yeah,
he was so late. I think the ball was already out before he left the ground. Like it was
exactly.
I mean, one thing I would just say, to go back to what we said before, that second half, if we'd had Hamilton available, I would have fancied our chances to maybe nick something because you know we were firing balls up, and okay, Declan Gallagher was having a great game. Maybe I don't know. I think potentially, I think Hamilton could have got some change out of the other side of that defensive pairing, and Callum Smith had a tough job trying to just kind of knock balls down, hold things up. You know, if we'd had Hamilton in there, I would have fancied our chances to nick something, to disrupt something, to make something happen. But again, even without him, you know, the guys that were on the pitch, Gillen did a power arc as well. A wee word for Scott McGill too, who maybe looked a wee bit wobbly in places, but again, you know, got stuck in, and you know, we came back and we had a good go towards the end.
Yeah, Scott McGill, he almost feels, and I don't mean to say this in a sort of negative context, they shouldn't take that in this way. He almost feels a bit of a forgotten man because he's sort of, as you say, he's the jack of all trades, master of none, whereby we can use him in all these positions, but he's not getting a start because everyone ahead, I think, I'm not sure if it might be New Blair that sort of touched on this before, but where he's not the best in any of the positions, but he can do a job there. So, yeah, just a mention for Scott McGill. What was your sort of thoughts on him coming on, Blair?
Yeah, I thought I agree with Leslie. I think the term we used with the boys in the pub after the game was rusty. He did look a bit off of it, but we were kind of crawling out for him to come on maybe about 5 minutes, 10 minutes before Murray made the change, just for a bit of energy, because that's what he gives you. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of in that Stanton and Connolly kind of mold of just relentlessly putting in effort. You get 110% out of him every week. I really like the guy. I think he's done great since he's come in, and I think you're right. He suffers from being too versatile. He's not the best centre midfielder we've got. He's not the best 10 we've got. He's not the best right back, left back, centre half, right winger, centre forward. He's probably decent in goals. But do you know what I mean? He can't do what the others can do. So I think he's going to be a squad player, which I don't think is a bad thing either. He's young. And I do feel like he's got a bit of talent and can come onto it.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, to come to yourself, Scott, so you've obviously seen Miguel come on. Were you sort of very much of the same opinion, where you just thought it was a good substitution for the time, or what were your sort of thoughts?
I mean, Davey Hancock, who does the commentary most weeks anyway when he's there, he kind of said the same thing. He was, and I'd actually forgot he was on the bench, which you're on about. He's a bit of a forgotten man, but Davey Hancock turned around and went, right, we've got about 10 minutes to go here. We've got a point, yeah, we would like to win it, but I would probably bring on Miguel for a bit of extra legs in the middle of the park. You could see Stanton starting to get a bit tired because he's just ran his legs off for 80 minutes there. And then, guys like Vaughan were starting to tail off a bit as well. So you just thought if you can bring him on, it maybe just re-energises us for the final sort of push. But I feel a bit sorry for him at the same time, because I can imagine he's had a few games where he's not even came on at all.
Yeah.
And it must be difficult to come into a game when you've only really been training for like 3 weeks, where everyone else has had 60 minutes. It'll be the same for Connolly, I'd imagine. When you've barely played, you've not got the feel of the game at all, and you've been asked to go and do a job for 15 minutes where he'll do a job, but at the same time you go, well, we need to realise he will be a little bit rusty.
Yeah, I think that as players, I think that's the first thing when you're at a team that's at the top of the table. I think last season was obviously a bit different when we had those injury issues, and we didn't have the squad depth. That I think it's a really good point to make, that players would have that opportunity to come in and make a mark. Whereas with this, you're sort of looking at the sort of players like your Stanton. Stanton's currently undroppable pretty much. You look at Callum Smith. Callum Smith's had a huge impact since coming in. Josh Mullen's getting an assist. Lewis Vaughan's getting goals. Jack Hamilton's obviously in and about causing issues. Jamie Gullen comes off the bench and gets a goal against Cali to win the game. So it's a very, very difficult position. And I think it must be a testament sort of, really, you hope to Ian Murray's sort of man management at this point, that he can sort of keep the players just sort of grounded and sort of say, okay, I get that you might not be getting game time at the moment, but you've got to understand as well that we are in this position and that the opportunities will come. You just need to be patient.
It reminds me, just before we move on, it reminds me a little bit of talking about forgotten men, but it reminds me a little bit of Dylan Tate. When Tate was kind of in and about the team, and he'd come in for 5-10 minutes. And like Scott says, you're not playing week in, week out. So you come in rusty. It's really hard to then have an impact and actually show yourself. And it took Brad Spencer, I think he broke his leg up at Arbroath, and Tate comes in. And all of a sudden, Tate stakes a claim in the team, and that was him in. And, he then goes on to get his move to Hibs and all the rest of that. But it is that thing of how do you make an impact when your literal job is to come in and steady the ship for 10 minutes at the end of a game?
Yeah, exactly.
As well, just to add to that, it's also difficult when he's been asked to do something different every time he comes on. Yeah. It's almost like Ian Murray's got a kind of tombola at the side of the pitch, and he just pulls a random position out, right, you're going to go in here and fill in for 15-20 minutes. And that's a tough thing for any player to do, let alone, a young player who's, still in their first few seasons of senior football. This week you're going to be filling in at right back, this week you're going to be a left back. For this 15 minutes, you're going to be a holding midfielder. To actually kind of come in and find what the position is that you can kind of excel and stand out in is a really tough shift that Miguel's been given.
Definitely.
Yeah, fully agree. Now, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention a certain man in the middle yesterday, and to get the blood pressure pumping up a wee bit. Mr. Alan Muir, the referee, started off okay, and then fell off a fucking cliff. Is the way that I would put it. So we're going to start. Leslie, I'm going to go to you first. Sort of, what was your sort of thoughts in terms of the refereeing performance yesterday, and how did you perceive it in terms of sort of the second half?
I think you've nailed it there. Started okay and then fell off an effing cliff. So there was the foul on Easton early on. It was Easton at the edge of the box, and the ref comes over, gives Grimshaw, I think, a talking to. Doesn't pull out a card, and you think, okay, the ref is not wanting to get his cards out too early. I might give him a card for that, but let's see how it pans out. And it then just got really weird and bizarre and erratic. And, things were running where you would want to pull it back. He was stopping things. And it's one of those, our referees had a really bad performance when it unites both sets of fans. And you're going on the socials and you've got both sets of fans saying that was an absolute shocker from the man in the middle. So the inconsistency, the bizarre nature of it, let's not forget that it was a rather weird foul as well that then led up to the goal. I mean, I'm not blaming the referee for that. There was a whole lot of things going on, but yeah, it was just a very bizarre and inconsistent performance that united both sets of fans.
Yeah, so I'd fully agree with that. So to come on actually to Scott, because again, Scott, obviously you watch it on Raith TV. What were your perceptions in terms of that high boot? I guess it was a high boot from Easton in the run up to the goal. Obviously, Raith TV would have probably provided that sort of slow-mo or close-up of it. Did you think that it was a foul when you've initially seen it? Because it seems to be there is a degree of a degree of consistency in terms of those sort of high boot decisions, because you see them. Liam Dick got sent off for one earlier in the season, which obviously, I mean, to be fair, he did connect with the boy's head. But yeah, it feels like there is a bit of a degree of inconsistency there.
To be honest, this whole rule I hate. It's especially the ones that they didn't connect with them, and it's to be honest, the United boy. I mean, if it's the other way around, then it's Vaughan putting his head in, you're probably going, it's actually smart play for the United boy, because the two of them have almost looked at the ball going, oh, this is 50-50 here, and then Easton's went up with his boot and then realised, I might get foul given away for this, so he's kind of pulled away for it, but the United boys then realised, right, he's going up with his foot, I'm going to go in with my head to win the foul, or that he hopes that the referee's going to give the foul. And straight away, the referee's quick as anything on it and just going, no, that's a foul. But you can see it. He's not even with the replay. He's not even connected with him at all. And the United boy didn't even hold his head, really. He kind of got up and just got on with it, because he was like, well, I've won the foul and there's nothing wrong with me. So I do. It's one of these sort of pet hates with today's refereeing game anyway, that just these sort of fouls. It's the same with goalies are untouchable. Which I suppose it helped us when they barged Big Kevin into the net later in the game, but at the same time, it's these sort of little things they annoy me a fair bit.
There was one in the second half, actually. You're saying goalies are untouchable, and it was perfectly sort of exemplified with Walton, the Dundee United keeper, where a ball got put into the box for a corner to the back post. Their player bundles over their keeper, who falls over, and the ball's bouncing about, and the referee blows for a foul for them, and you're thinking, okay. So Blair, I'll leave the big one for you. Obviously, this was the one that Raith TV, unfortunately, just with the sort of unfortunately didn't really catch the clearest, and that's no fault of their own. Was the sort of penalty shout in the second half, where a ball in the box hits. It looked from the south stand to have hit off Liam Grimshaw's hand. The Raith TV coverage obviously was from sort of the railway stand, so it maybe didn't catch it the clearest. Again, not their fault. What were your thoughts on that incident there?
Surprised it wasn't his worst decision of the day. I mean, it was. I mean, I'm a Rovers fan. I was shouting for a penalty. It was probably a bit close to him. I think as fair as you could say. I don't think it was a natural position. He kind of turned side on, and the hand was out a bit for me. It's one of them that if you're the defending side and it gets given, you're annoyed, but at the same time you're not, crying for the referee to lose his job. Like, it's one of them that you can kind of see either way. But I think you hit the nail on the head at the beginning. He absolutely shat the bed yesterday. It was one of the worst refereeing performances that I think I've ever seen at Starks Park. It was awful. I mean, and there was the one where the boy running out from, I think it was just before the free kick, Callum Smith breaks out, and the boy, I mean, he chokeslammed him basically to the floor, and then walked away as if to say, aye, fine, I'll get a booking, and then turned around and went, oh, we're playing on. What happened there? it was horrendous. The booking that he gave Sean Byrne, that because Tony Watt kicked Sean Byrne, I'm like, it was wild, and it was so inconsistent all afternoon. He was given free kicks both ways that were just ridiculous.
And I think it's important to call out, it wasn't just for us as well. I know Duncan said in the group chat that there was one incident where I think it was Callum Smith kicked someone above the knee and completely got away with it. So Callum Smith's a fan of this podcast, though. He follows us on Twitter, so as far as I'm concerned, he can do no wrong. I think as well, it's very difficult because as supporters, it's very easy to get caught up in these things. And we've obviously this season, I think if we're being completely honest, we've had quite a lot of breaks that have gone favourably with us for the referees. That Morton game in particular at home, with Lewis Vaughan in the box going down for that penalty. I think it's one of these ones where it's quite easy to sort of lose the run of yourself at times, and I'm bad for it myself, where I'll sort of think, oh Christ, that referee's been absolutely awful, and you remember the name and they come back, like obviously. I remember the one, I think it was Matty Northcroft who had a nuke against Ayr, and then Crawford Allen as well, and then obviously more recently.
I think the worst referee that we've had in recent times is Colin Stephen.
Colin Stephen.
I mean,
that yesterday
the
was
boy even looks like he's got no pals.
He's sitting down the pub raging like, oh Christ. That's a question for you guys. Can you guys ever remember a particularly distinctly good refereeing performance where you've ever came away and being like, actually, that referee did really well today? One actually stands out for me.
Well, a good referee is when you didn't notice him.
Yeah.
That's the the straightforward answer. Is if you've not really noticed him, he's usually had a decent game because he's just either let the game go or he's called everything a foul that is a foul.
Yeah.
I remember one Fife derby. I think it was at East End. Might have been Craig Thompson, but it was just one of the games where there's a niggly foul in the first 5 minutes and he gives the free kick. There's another foul and it's just that moment of, I'm not booking you. Let's just calm this down. Let's everybody behave like adults, and let's go. Was that
the game that Falkingham absolutely halved someone like in the first minute?
I think it might have been
kickoff. Eddie Malone.
Oft. Enough about that. Don't need that chat on this podcast. Yeah, the one that stood out for me, the only reason I remember it was because it was a game on my birthday. It was like back in January. It was a good few years ago. I think we'd be playing under Grant Murray, but it was actually I'm trying to remember who it was. It might have been John Beaton. But for some reason, he was refereeing our game. It was like a category A referee, and he just let the game flow like really well. And me and my friend were sitting there and we were saying, actually, this referee's doing a really good job here. He's just letting the game run. You don't want the game to be stopping every few minutes. There was a lot of sort of niggly fouls and things like that should have been given, but he's just giving advantages. So yeah, that's one to consider.
Sorry, Scott, I was going to ask you, what was your feeling like? I mean, if you can remove yourself from it, what was your view of the game yesterday? Did you think it was a good game?
First 20 minutes was scrappy as hell. It was like, both teams just realised it looked like they knew how big a game it was already, even it was 8 games in we are now. But you could tell that the first 15, 20, that it took a long time to settle in. But then once the 20 minutes had gone past, I actually thought for the other 70, it was a pretty good advert for the championship. It was a pretty decent game. I thought neither team dominated the game. Each team had little 10-minute spells, but I thought it was a pretty even game. And as we've said earlier in the podcast, that probably a draw was a fair result, to be honest.
I wonder because it felt like it was really start-stop because there was a lot of fouls and a lot of niggly kicks, but the atmosphere was really good. So I wasn't sure whether, watching it on the telly, is it a game that actually ends up being a bit of a really frustrating kind of afternoon, or if it was just the atmosphere that was kind of, because I came away from it thinking that was a good game, regardless of the result and everything else. So it's a really good game of football.
Yeah. Second half was a wee bit stop-start, like you say, but first half I thought once everybody kind of settled down and it wasn't as scrappy, that it was a pretty decent game.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that myself, and I think that it was good because you got a sense of the buzz about the place as well. I'm sure you got that, Blair, just being in the stadium and sort of seeing the game. It just felt like, there was definitely you had the lads up the back creating an atmosphere. Just overall, generally, an excellent number of ticket sales, given the sort of circumstances. You look at the weather outside and you think, oh, geez, going to be a long one. And yeah, just a performance that the team should be really proud of, because they just battled away for the full 90 minutes. And Dundee United with yeah.
There's a kind of there's a cup tie. The cup tie thing, the cliche gets used a lot, but there was a bit of that. The whole game. There was a kind of real cup tie feel to it, with Graham Kilgour appearing, doing his wee video piece on Twitter. Raith Rovers fans all around here. And then the buzz around the place, and then both teams going for it. Absolutely.
And just to give a little plug, as well, not that he'd notice it, is Sam North, the video that he put out. I don't know if anyone watched that, but that was really good, just to sort of see. I think the club have basically said, right, he's obviously clearly an influencer, for lack of a better phrase, in a sense of like, this is a great opportunity to show what's going on behind the scenes, because it's not always easy to sort of figure out a time and a place to sort of do this is what the dressing room's like, this is what it's like behind the scenes, here, meet these people. So it was really good to sort of get that insight and have a sort of look, and obviously you get the feeling of how much the club's changed by what Dylan Easton's saying about it as well.
Did you see the ball boy? The wee ball boy spots him and says, "Am I on YouTube?" That was it was absolutely priceless.
Brilliant. So yeah, obviously the game ends 1-0. And my next segment that we've got called here is not just pretty faces, because yeah, huge games from Sean Byrne and Kevin Dabrowski. So obviously, I know that we touched on it before. Those are two faces that have came in the summer and really established themselves in the sort of in the team. So yeah, just overall, has anyone got any other thoughts on the sort of 90 minutes of the game itself? We're all quite happy with it. Well covered.
I think it was a good point, well earned.
Yeah, fully agree.
Never a bad point in the championship.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move on to the big question. I don't know how many people caught this, but there was doing the rounds on social media after the game, was that Dundee United had literally parked their team bus at the bottom of the ramp of Starks Park, which I know we have a bit of laugh about this, but there was an ambulance trying to get out, and you do think a bit like, why are you still insisting on remaining there? Just move it up the street a wee bit and let the ambulance out. But again, these are questions for bigger people than myself to figure out. So the big question this week is, what is the biggest display of bus parking that you've either seen for or against Raith Rovers? So I'll open the floor up. I'll start with yourself, Blair.
I mean, we talked about this last night. I'll be honest, I really struggled. There was plenty of examples under McGlynn in particular of us shitting the bed. Not so much of us parking a bus, but the two that I've kind of picked out, and it's only reason it's two is because it was the original, and then the replay was the Aberdeen Scottish Cup games. So obviously Williamson scores at the North Stand, which, to be fair, probably should have got a mention on Thursday night as well, because it was a cracking finish. And then we parked the bus in, and Mark Campbell just heading people, anything in his way, everything. And then they score that 99th minute goal or whatever it was. That's another refereeing performance for you as well. He was just going to play until they scored. We go up there for the replay. I mean, in terms of, if you were going to make a movie of a football match, your captain and leader gets cut out of a car on Monday, and you go up to Pittodrie on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. Dougie Hill pulls up in the warm-up, so there's literally only Grant Murray in playing centre-half. Stevie Simmons drops in from midfield into centre-half, giving a Scott Brown-esque performance. You've got Mark Ferry, who is the Scott McGill of the McGlynn era, playing at left-back. Taddy scores that goal that he nearly missed from all of 2 yards or whatever it was. And just a proper park the bus moment. Although it has to be said, my favourite story with Stevie Simmons for that night is McGlynn saying to him, no matter what happens, you just get rid of it. You just put your foot through the ball, son. You get it up the park. And then Stevie Simmons Cruyff turning somebody on the edge of his own box. And McGlynn just going absolutely mental at him, like, just get rid of the ball.
That was it was a funny game because Craig Wilson also had the flu. Right. So that's another additional sort of factor in there. Me and my friend, we always laugh about this because we went up, and I was at uni at the time, And obviously, I'm sort of skint student. Said to my parents, "Can I borrow money to go up to Pittodrie?" Nah, no chance. So my mate's like, "Nah, it's fine. I'll pay you." And there was about 3 supporters buses going up. The supporters bus that he was meant to get on completely drives past the stop. So I'm on this bus with no money on the way up to Aberdeen, talking to Eddie Doig like, I've got no money, by the way. He's like, it's fine. We'll pay you into the game. Don't worry about this. So fortunately, the other supporters bus went back. So we are sitting next to the segregation fence. And my mate, as a joke at the start, he says, "Oh, if we score, you're leading the charge." Soon as we score, I'm like, I don't know, I must have been, 21, 22 at this point, so fucking daft as a brush. Soon as we score, I just run and jump onto the fence and start noising up our fans. And there's this woman that's going absolutely ballistic. She must have been early 20s as well. She's absolutely going mental. And then injury time, you hear this apoplectic scream. She kicks the chair in front, which shatters, and then storms off out. And then I've never been called a specky bastard more than walking down by that fence. When I was going down we were going down the front to celebrate at the end. But yeah, that is 100% a worthy mention of a game of.
It was a great night.
Yeah, parking the bus. And
there's a debate as well we had last night. John Greer disagrees with me, but I remember Dougie Hill pulling up in the warm-up, and because of some stupid rule, it was so close to kick-off that because he subbed on Bobby Sloan for him.
Aye.
Who then went into the midfield and he dropped Simmons into centre half. But they counted it as a substitution. I'm sure they did. And we only got 2 subs for the rest of the night as well.
Wouldn't surprise me. So we're going to turn to yourself next, Scott. What did you have in mind for parking the bus?
I was at the home game for that Aberdeen one, but I didn't get to go to the away tie because obviously it's in Aberdeen. My dad was leaving at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was still at high school, so I'd only just finished. They went, "Nah, you're just in school, so I can't take you out." I was just like, and then see when I was listening actually on the radio that night, but see when we won, I was just like, could have been there. But no, the game I went with was a game that I did go to, which was the cup final at Easter Road against Rangers. That's up there as one of my best sort of Rovers days for sure. It's it heightened it, as I think Jason Thompson's came out. It definitely heightened it, the fact we're playing Rangers for the start.
100%.
I mean, if that had been Queen of the South like it was a couple of seasons ago, great to win a cup, but at the same time, and then never got spoke about after that week. It was the same with the build-up. Because the semi-final had been, I think it was December or something, and we played Annan. We then had to wait 4 months till we got to the final. But the guys were saying as well pre-match, is like, it took for ages till this final got here, but then once it was just everywhere for 2 weeks was just, it's the final against Rangers, it's the final against Rangers. And then the game itself was a shocking game. Like, it was terrible. And I was sitting next to my dad, and we keep looking at each other going, we'll probably get beat at some point here, but it's just, we've no turned up at all. And I think Grant Murray said in the interview after the game, it's like, I wasn't happy at half-time because we're not showing ourselves in a good light here. We are a decent team, but we're not showing it here. And then, the Rangers just constantly battered us for about 70 of the 90 minutes, and Mosney probably should have had a hat-trick of headers, and he kept ballooning them over the bar for about a yard out every single time. And you could tell it got to about 80 minutes and I went, we've got a chance here, because they were starting to get extremely frustrated, the fact that they couldn't score. And I mean, he wasn't really a figure that people probably remember too much, but Lee Robinson had a good game that day.
Yeah.
And he didn't actually have a good time in all with us. I mean, he was involved in some games we were getting gubbed like 5-2 at him to Livingston, and he's in goals for all of this. And so I think it was documented that he actually gave his medal to Davy McGurn because he got us to the final as well, but couldn't play in the game. But it was definitely up there, as we were pretty much just sat in. And I thought it was Dougie Hill's best game in a Rovers jersey that day. He was just heading everything and booting anything away that was just in his way. Paul Watson also was brilliant that day as well. But and then obviously we know what happens in extra time with Mosney just slipping, Spence then slipping and all, and then Rangers kicking the ball off each other before Baird is able to slip it under the keeper. And I mean, anytime that sort of reappears on Facebook around the sort of date that it was on, just the noise that comes from, what was it, 3,500 us in that stand behind the goal compared to I think they had about 17,000. It was incredible to hear it was only 3,000, but it just was ballistic. And I was sat 2 seats along for Brian Graham, who had obviously played for us a few seasons beforehand, and he was just going as mental as what we were. And he was an ex-player that just probably barely got him tickets or something. But it just shows you that just what the sort of feel of the club was at that time as well.
I love the story that John Baird had about that game, which is that he was running down one of the touchlines to get the ball at a throw-in or something like that, and he noticed one of his friends from school, who is like, waves at him, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing here? You're a Tim." And like all these folk turn at him like, "What the fuck?" But there's a few things that stand out for me about that game. That, like, the game itself, as you say, was absolutely shocking. I remember Joe Cardle getting booked for like going in front of a ball at a free kick that Lee McCulloch just pelted off him, and getting booked for that and being absolutely fizzing at Kevin Clancy for it. I remember Morsney booting the post after one of those efforts that you mentioned. But that was just a tremendous day. Me and my friends, we met outside the Omni Centre, and there was a guy in a full Union Jack suit with a Union Jack like plastic bowler hat on, walking down to the game, and you're thinking, "Fuck me, just how can you like have your life like that?" And then you get to the game, and at the end of the game, you see this plastic bowler hat rolling down the front of the pitch, and you think that's brilliant. It's just,
I remember the train home as well, actually, because we left Easter Road. And we thought, we're getting back to Kirkcaldy. We're just going to go back and get back to Kirkcaldy. Jumping on the train, and it being full of Rangers fans heading to Fife, Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, all heading north, and thinking, this is exactly what the problem is.
Brilliant. Yeah, definitely one of the days that you'll never forget as long as you live if you're a Rovers fan. So Leslie, you're up next. What was your perfect display of parking the bus?
Right, well, weirdly enough, before we even started thinking about this, during the week, the last episode, Blair was talking about Stevie McInnesby's free kick into the North Stand against Go-To Trotterflag, and that sent me off down a UEFA Cup-shaped rabbit hole. And I've never actually seen this game until about 5 days ago. But there's the legendary away game to Akranes, where Jimmy Nichols started with 7 defenders. And this had kind of passed through legend. And I only actually saw this during the week. Some excellent human being has uploaded the Icelandic TV footage to YouTube. So just for a bit of background. So the first leg, this was after we beat Go-To, and we were drawn against Akranes. We were a fairly good team. And we beat them 3-1 at Starks Park. And the problem with that was the one, because away goals, this meant that it was going to be tight. And Akranes were a good team. So we went up to Iceland, and Jimmy Nichols' philosophy was clearly, we are going to park the bus, or whatever park the bus is in Icelandic. It's probably about 38 letters long. And so we started with this. Basically, any defender you could name from the Rovers in the mid-90s was on the pitch. Ronnie Coyle was out there, and goodness knows who's else. Sean Dennis must have been there as well. Julian Broadell, Davy Sinclair. Any defensive-minded player was out there. And again, at this time, I was school age. I'm sure my age. I was primary school at this point. And of course, my dad was not taking us to Iceland. Flights were expensive. We couldn't go there. We were listening to the updates on the radio, and we knew it was squeaky bum time. We knew that it was tight. And Akranes had scored. We knew if they scored again, we were out effectively unless we scored. What I didn't realise until I saw the footage was quite how defensively we were playing. So the footage is pretty grainy, so it's hard to know exactly what's going on. But there is at one point what looks like a 9-man wall. So Akranes had this striker called Arnar Gunnlaugsson, and he looked like a Viking. If you had to imagine what a Scandinavian striker looked like, he had this wild, long, curly blonde hair. I mean, he was a good footballer. He ended up out in your neck of the woods, Scotland and Feyenoord, and then he ended up in England too. But he's got this free kick, and then
Dundee
there's this
United
wall, and he sees, pardon?
And
Aye,
he played for Dundee United.
He ended up at Dundee United, absolutely, yeah. So you see Scott Thompson, who for the younger listeners, that's Robbie's dad. Scott Thompson marshalling this wall, and there's the Icelandic commentary. It's like the Swedish chef from the Muppets, Borky, 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 and you see Gun Langsson running up, and then this free kick just disappears into this huge wall, and then disappears off into the North Sea, into the Atlantic, bounces off somebody, and that's it, and we're through. And then the rest, as I say, is history, and we get drawn against Bayern Munich. So, for one that's been in legend, to actually see the footage of this Jimmy Nicholl park in the bus masterclass, that's my favourite park in the bus moment.
I'm actually just, while you're talking, sorry, Duncan, while you're talking, I was just looking up the starting 11, because I was thinking to myself, who else would have been in there? I was thinking, Robbie Rayside, is that too early for him? I'm having a look. They literally lined up 6-3-1. So it was Ronnie Coyle, Davy Sinclair, Stevie McInnesby, Sean Dennis, David Kirkwood, and Julian Broddle all started the game together, with Dare Lennon and Cameron in midfield and Crawford up front. Beautiful.
What I love about this, though, is the fact that there's someone in Iceland who's obviously got a passion about a cranny's 1990s football, like we do for Raith Rovers, who's just said, yeah, it was part of our history. So that the Icelandic Daniel Elder is out there uploading clips onto YouTube from just random matches in the 90s. So that would leave myself. For me, my favourite display of parking the bus was Dundee away in the Scottish Cup. We went into a 2-0 lead in the first 10 minutes, which I don't think anyone thought was ever going to happen, particularly given Dundee were at their highest of free spend. Well, I don't know about highest of free spendings because they're an absolute basket case of a club. But yeah, they'd spent heavily. They had like Griffiths and Harkins in their team, among others. And yeah, we raced into a 2-0 lead, which really should have been a 3-0 lead if we're talking about shocking refereeing decisions. Graham Weir getting that goal ruled out, which would have been his first for the season, and just a sort of perfect way to sort of see him off in terms of his Rovers career. But after that, very much Dundee scored, and then it was a backs to the wall job. I think in particular, Thierry Gattuso had an excellent game that day, which is not something that we said very often. But yeah, just overall, just a really, really solid display of parking a bus and getting the ball away. And then we went on to play, funnily enough, Dundee United in the semi-final, which we respectively lost as they went on to win the competition. So those are our displays of parking the bus, which I think nicely rounds us off. I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you for all your retweets, your comments, sharing. We had a lot of people get back to us with their favourite North Stand goals, mentions of, we had Nadie in there, that Ian Williamson goal came up. So again, thank you very, very much for all your positive comments and taking the time to obviously listen to the podcasts, obviously. We'll be back during the week, I'd imagine, for a Montrose Challenge Cup deep dive. I'm not sure who'll be hosting that one, but we'll obviously look forward to that. So it's goodbye from me, and I'll leave it all to yourselves to say goodbye as well.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Cheers. See you later.
Aye, thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.